Welcome to the Beyond the Dollar Signs podcast with your host, Mark Taylan. Mark, how are you? It's good to see you.
Hi, Bill. It's great to see you as well.
No, this is episode number 2 for those of you keeping track at home, or for those of you who've been listening for a while and thought, maybe I'll go back and find out where this guy came from and what he's about. So it's good to be with you, because today we're going to uncover the story behind Advisors360 and learn more about Mark and explore what sets his firm apart from so many others in the financial advisory landscape. So, Mark, I'm really eager to begin this conversation. We know a little bit about your personal story. We heard that in the first episode. Today, let's find out the story behind the firm. Tell us about Advisors360, if you will.
Yes, Bill. So, Advisors360 is located in Northern California. And kind of my backstory is, I spent let's say 12 years at the major financial firms. And what I saw at the financial firms was really a focus on product and really a corporate drive to just bring in new assets and new clients. So I didn't see, it was always a product solution versus financial planning, right? And so what I started to see as a trend in the industry was people would walk in with what I would consider fragmented advice, which means that if they talked to the insurance agent, maybe they presented a product and then they met with a securities rep and they did a product based on securities, of course, or real estate, right? But nobody was really giving them the advice to put it all together, right? And so what I felt that was the missing link for clients, right? They needed really a financial roadmap, a plan. And what we did is, early on, it was the early beginning stages. I started thinking, what's the best way to serve clients, right? One of the things that I saw in the corporate world was advisors managing books of business that were comprised of sometimes 200 to 400 clients' households, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, and I was managing books like that as well. And I thought, there's no way to really spend the kind of time with clients that they deserve, right? If you just do the simple math, 400 clients in a year's time frame, that's probably a few hours per client in a year, right? There's no way to get to that many people. And so what I decided early on was, I really wanted to give clients that comprehensive advice, right? Put it all together, put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And in 2014, I founded Advisors360. It's a private wealth firm. We're a licensed fiduciary. And what the main difference was, I think one of the big differences is that when you are part of a corporation, you're usually biased by using their products, right? Yeah. And so, as an independent firm, you still custody, right? The securities have to be somewhere. So we still use the big institutions like Charles Schwab. But the difference is, as an independent advisor, you're not an employee of the firm. The big institutions become your partners, right? So because you have the client relationships. And so that was, I think, really a big key is that being able to still have the access and to the big institutions that clients were comfortable with, but put them all together on an independent platform. And so, what really drove me to create Advisors360 was, one, I wanted to work with less clients and be selective about who I work with, because it's quite a commitment. I wanted clients to work with us that really were committed to being with us and having us as counsel through, their life journey.
Well, tell me a little bit about, I know I'm looking at some of the notes that you've shared with me before we started the podcast. You have something called a wealth path, or the wealth path. Is that a product, or is that a process, or what is that?
Wealth path is, we've always done this, but we actually formally put a name to it recently. And wealth path is really what we call a proprietary process of our discovery with clients and how we walk them through, like we talked about, identifying all the assets, identifying what the value is, what their pain points are, where we see room for improvement as we address, crafting that financial plan. So again, what we call the wealth path process is just our process of the initial meeting and getting them to a very robust financial plan that's dynamic, right? Because not everybody's lives changes as they get older. Their priorities change, their needs change. And so the important thing is to have a really good foundational plan as a roadmap for us to be able to make adjustments along the way.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Now, you hinted at something. Well, you hinted at this next question, which is my question to you about the focus of Advisors 360. You touched on it a little bit in that last answer, but could you expand on that, please?
Like I said, the focus really is on engaging with families that are committed to the process, right? That are committed to us, that we are the advisor that can bring, solutions to them that can help them address like really the different stages of life, right? And as I've been in the business a long time, most of the clients that we engage with typically are pre-retirement all the way to the end of their lives. And we watch them evolve, right? In that process. So, our goal is really to be that trusted counsel for their families. And each stage brings different challenges, right? Clients in their later stages of their life, they're not thinking about, do we have enough income to retire? They're thinking about, what happens to my spouse if something happens to me? What about my children? Do I have everything in order, right? Because at that stage, they want to make sure that they need that validation that everything is in place. They're living trust. Their assets are titled correctly. Is my family going to be okay? What happens in these situations? And what happens when we're gone? What about our children? And so that's why it's so important to do really good planning and meet with clients on a regular basis. One of the first things I ask them when they come in is, so what's new, right? Are there new plans? Somebody early in retirement may say, hey, can we afford to buy that beach condo, right? And so, at different stages, people have, what we do is we take what their wishes are and we run it against the financial plan to see if it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, do you work by yourself or do you have a team? And if you have a team, could you introduce us to them a little bit, as it were?
Yeah. So we got a great team that we work with and strategic partners. Really, it depends on the resources we bring in, depends on the client's needs and what we're trying to accomplish, right? If it's, I'll give you an example. One of the things that's really important to us that we really kind of specialize in is the care for aging parents. It's one of the topics that's really dear to our hearts because we've experienced it in our family. And that is when your parents get older, what's the plan to take care of them? As everybody knows, long-term care is really expensive. It can just devastate a portfolio. So in a case like that, we would bring in, typically you were looking at insurance companies and to help, structure ways to provide that type of long-term care, right? So it really depends on the scenario. We're determining who we bring in to help partner, because we're not the experts at everything. So we know, okay, this is, we're in California. The cost of long-term care is $10,000 a month, right? And what are the different levels? And so it creates a lot of comprehensive planning. And then from a planning perspective, we have to look at the assets and say, well, and do we have enough in assets? And what are the assets? Are they real estate? Are they securities? So it's a really big process that we bring in teams to help us kind of crunch the numbers and come back to our clients and say, here are the options. Here's the best case. Here's the worst case. Here's what happens in the event, the care increases. Those are the processes we go through. So it does require a team effort and bringing in those resources. One of the exciting things about the firm, I'd like to say, is that, My son Ryan just joined the practice last summer.
Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you. It's really given me a kind of a boost, because for many years, as I've gotten older, I started to be concerned of, well, what happens to my clients as I get older? If I start aging out, what's the next step? Where would they go? So, my son, has a lot of experience. Life experience. He's in his 30s and was in the Navy for 6 years, graduated from the local university, Santa Clara, in finance, and he's getting his MBA, should be completing it this year. So it's great to have him aboard, because now I think it brings comfort in, even to my clients. My clients are super excited. My existing clients are very excited to meet with him and interact with him. And so I'm excited to announce that he's part of the practice.
Wow, that's terrific. That's terrific. So a Navy veteran, so he brings that skill set and understands that mindset to the team as well as just the general mindset of the practice as well. That's terrific. Congratulations on having him in the practice.
Thank you.
So why the niche? You sort of hinted at, you like dealing with perhaps people who are, preparing for retirement, but why that particular niche, Mark?
I really think we run into a lot of people that just are, it's a big step to go from working for 30 years to jumping into retirement, right? And so, clients come in with that uncertainty in their minds. And, this is one of the things that we talk about. And the name of our podcast is Beyond the Dollar Signs, right? But most people don't really know what that means. Is $500,000 enough? Is $3 million enough? When you put that together with Social Security and pension and their expenses, it's very complex, right? So clients come in not knowing if they've got enough to retire. And of course, people are living much longer these days. The typical retirement, most that I see is, 62 to 67. That seems to be the age group where people, that's their target. Why? Because Social Security can start at 62. They can draw from retirement accounts, but that group of people, I think they're making one of the biggest decisions in their life, and that money and their plan has to stretch maybe as long as 30 plus years. And so, they don't want to have a problem at 75 and run out of money. That's one of the biggest concerns with clients is, am I going to make it? What are the pitfalls in retirement? And my job is to really look at that and look at things like, how are you invested? How strong is that income? Where's it coming from? Who guarantees that? What are the pitfalls in retirement? What are your expenses like? And what kind of lifestyle do you want? And we've seen the gamut of, people's dreams and wishes and having to come to reality with, well, maybe that doesn't make sense for us, and what kind of lifestyle do they want to have? So it's an area where I think our firm brings the most value and experience, because that has been the type of client that we've worked with and successfully. I like to say I'm very proud that we've walked with clients from that point and many to the end of their lives, right? And I think there's no better. I don't know. I like to think that we've had a strong impact in that process, right? And then allowing those clients that we worked with for many years and watching that legacy continue with their children and grandchildren. That I think has been one of the most rewarding things in this profession for us.
Wow. Well, how do you get new clients? Where do they come from, and how do they end up in your office?
That's a great question, Bill. As I mentioned, when I left the big firms, a lot of clients followed me, right? And they wanted to continue working with me. But in regards to how we grow, it's selective. Our best referral source is our existing clients, right? Word of mouth. And we've grown really organically through referrals through the clients that we have. Naturally, we work with the families. So typically, let's say a couple has 2 or 3 children, they have become our clients, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that multi-generational passing of wealth is part of our growth, right? Or our growth is come from that. But, over the years, and I've realized that, we've been in front of a lot of people, and not everybody's a fit for us, right? And because of what we specialize in. But I think one of my goals through something like a podcast and social media is to share the information that I've learned and experienced with clients from all different ages, whether they're building wealth, whether they're business owners, whether they're pre-retirees, et cetera. I think that through this medium of podcast and social media, I could reach more people. And, with my son in place and we're growing our business, we're going to add new staff, I think that now we're in somewhat growth mode again and taking on new clients. And so, but we want to grow smart, right? I never want to jeopardize the clients that I have at the sake of growing and not having that personal experience. The clients that have been committed and with us for, some more than 2 decades, my commitment is to them. I will continue to do that. I will not grow at the sake of, just building a firm that's too big and not personal.
That's interesting. Is that part of what makes Advisors360 different? I mean, there are a lot of people that people can go see. There are a lot of financial advisors people can go see. But is that approach you're talking about part of what makes you different?
I believe so. I like to think of we're an elite practice. It's not quite invitation only, but we are selective in who we work with. That first meeting that we have with clients, it's really, let's learn about you. It's a discovery process. It's about who we are and who they are and what got them to that point, right? And so that first meeting is really discovery. It's not a product push at all. It's a discovery to see if we're really a good fit for each other. And, at the end of that meeting, I think we kind of know, like, is this a good fit for each other? And that's our process.
Yeah. And it goes both ways. I think we probably should note, there are going to be people who come in and sit down with you and go, I don't know if we fit here or not, which is the value of that first meeting, right? There's no obligation sitting down to talk to a financial advisor because it gives both parties a chance to feel each other out and decide whether you're going to be working together, because it's a big decision.
No, I agree. People have a lot of choices, especially in this modern age, right? You've got online advisors, you've got a lot of access to, financial advice, right? And I like to say, we're really committed to the families we work with, and we generally treat them like family. Often, we'll go to lunch. They know my wife, they know my children, my stories, and we know theirs, right? We know what's important to them. And so, you said it right on the nose. We're not the right fit for everybody, but where we're different is the clients that work with us, we're committed to helping them achieve their goals, to be that trusted resource, to provide comfort, validation through their lifetime. And, we really care. We just want to be there for them and, through this whole process.
So just really quickly here, what's the expectations like? I mean, if you come in for a first meeting, do you have to bring stuff with you? Do you bring everything, or is that second time around? Or give us an idea of what that looks like.
That's a great question. Sometimes clients come prepared and they come prepared with statements and so forth in a binder full of documents. And, really that first meeting, it isn't about that, right? I'm happy that they're anxious to get to know us. I think, but really it's a discovery meeting. I really want to put that paperwork and all the stuff they brought in to the side. That's for a later meeting. That first meeting is let's have a conversation. Let's talk and get to know each other. Let's see if our values align, if you and if it's a good fit. And that's really what that's about, right? After that first meeting, if they bring in documents, or we'll get that acknowledgement of, now that you've gotten a chance to meet us, it's if you want to move to the second meeting, that's when we really start to dig in. We start to dig into concepts. We start to dig into the individual assets and kind of measure that up to their goals and start the process. But that first meeting is never, it's a learning meeting is what I call it.
That's great. Well, we're coming to the end of this podcast. So it leads to the question, most obviously, what's next? What are we going to talk about next time, Mark?
I thought a lot about that. I think what's important is, you've heard my backstory. You've heard who we are and why we exist. I'm thinking about topics that clients want to hear about, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are, maybe specifics at some point of what is that next step? How do you go from, 30 years of accumulating assets? How do you turn that into income? Right. Mm-hmm. And so, there's many financial topics that in future podcasts that we'll discuss.
That's terrific. That I look forward to those conversations because, you got there. Now, what do you do with it, and how do you sort of keep it and spend it? Which is always
That's right.
You're right. I always love that. Have your cake and eat it too. And I keep thinking, wait, but if I have my cake and I'm eating it, I don't know if I have my cake anymore. But that's the case when it comes to retirement. You've made your money. Now, how do you deal with it? How do you manage it? And how does it treat you right for the rest of your life? And I look forward to those conversations, Mark.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
For people who are listening to the podcast who are thinking, maybe I should have a conversation with that guy or, his team. How do they reach out and get a hold of you, Mark?
The best way is schedule an appointment through, an email or through our Calendly link. I would certainly invite you to learn more about our firm by going to our website, Advisors360pwm.com. Tune into our podcast, look at our social media, just get a feel for who we are and what we stand for.
And for those of you who are listening to the podcast who didn't have time to write any of that down, it's in the show notes. You can go dig that out later if you need to. The other thing you can do doesn't require any pencil, pad, or anything else. It just you just need something where you can reach out and hit the follow button. Then you can become a subscriber to the podcast. That's pretty easy to do.
Yeah, that's right.
And I would ask that if you like the podcast, if you're finding this interesting, you find it helpful, share it with friends. Give it a good rating. Let people know about it because word of mouth promotion really does make a difference. People like hearing about useful, informative things from people they know as opposed to some weird bot that's out there floating around on the social media. So we'd appreciate it. So until next time, I'm Bill Tucker. On behalf of Mark and everybody at 360, thank you for taking the time to listen today, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Dollar Signs, Financial Clarity. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.advisors360pwm.com or give us a call at 408-778-8280. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Advisors360. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.